The night was thick with fog, and the cold wind howled through the small coastal town of Harrow's End. The town's residents often whispered of a dark legend, the story of Captain Scary, a malevolent pirate who had once terrorized the seas hundreds of years ago. According to the tales, he had been cursed by a mysterious witch, destined to wander the earth eternally, feasting on fear and blood. The captain's ship, the Blood Tide, had been lost in a tempest centuries ago. Yet, on moonless nights, it was said that the ghostly ship would reappear, floating in the mist just off the shore. Anyone who saw it was doomed to face the wrath of Captain Scary and his damned crew. The mere sight of its crimson sails was a harbinger of death. On one such night, a group of teenagers, Tom, Laura, Mike, and Sarah, decided to test the legend. They were thrill-seekers, always looking for a new scare, and Captain Scary's myth seemed like the perfect adventure. Armed with flashlights and a camera, they made their way to the beach, determined to capture any supernatural phenomena. "I bet this is just some old fisherman's tale," Tom scoffed, as they trudged through the dense fog. "There's no such thing as ghosts." "But what if there is?" whispered Sarah, her voice trembling. "What if Captain Scary is real?" Before anyone could respond, a haunting melody drifted through the fog, a melody of a ghostly sea shanty, sung in a deep, raspy voice. The group froze in terror as the mist began to thicken, swirling around them like a living entity. Then they saw it. The Blood Tide emerged from the mist, its tattered sails billowing in a non-existent wind. The ship was massive, its hull blackened as if charred by the fires of hell. Dark, twisted figures moved along the deck, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. And at the helm stood Captain Scary himself. He was a towering figure, dressed in a long, weather-beaten coat. His face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but his eyes shone like molten fire. A cruel smile stretched across his lips, revealing jagged teeth stained with blood. In one hand, he held a rusted cutlass that dripped with a dark, viscous substance. "Who dares trespass on my shore?" his voice boomed, echoing through the fog. The sound sent chills down the teens' spines. Tom, trying to muster courage, took a step forward. "We're just here for some pictures," he stammered. "We didn't mean any harm." Captain Scary's laughter was a hideous sound, like the creaking of an ancient ship about to snap in half. "Harm? You've summoned me from the depths, and now you'll pay the price." Before any of them could react, dark shadows sprang from the ship. They were the twisted remains of Captain Scary's crew, once human, now cursed souls bound to the captain's eternal torment. Their skeletal hands reached out, grasping at the teens with unnatural strength. Mike screamed as one of the crew dragged him towards the ship. His eyes widened in horror as the creature's touch burned his skin, leaving dark, festering marks. Sarah tried to run, but another crew member caught her, its fingers digging into her flesh. She struggled, but it was as if her strength was being drained away. "Let them go," Laura shouted, swinging her flashlight at the nearest figure. The light passed through it, and the creature recoiled, hissing. Captain Scary's gaze shifted to her, his eyes narrowing. "Ah, a fighter. It's been so long since I had a good chase." With a wave of his hand, the fog thickened, swallowing Laura whole. She stumbled blindly, her heart racing as she heard the captain's voice whispering all around her. "You can't escape, girl. No one escapes the Blood Tide." Panic surged through her as she felt something cold brush against her ankle. She looked down and saw skeletal hands reaching up from the sand, pulling her down. She screamed, but the fog muffled her cries. Tom, the last one standing, could only watch in helpless terror as his friends were dragged onto the ship. Captain Scary turned to him, his smile widening. "Don't worry, boy. You'll join them soon enough." Summoning every ounce of courage, Tom raised his camera and snapped a picture. The flash of light seemed to momentarily disrupt the captain's form, causing him to flicker like a fading projection. Tom turned and ran, his heart pounding as Captain Scary's laughter echoed in his ears. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of his home. He locked the doors, bolted the windows, and sank to the floor, gasping for breath. He glanced at the camera, his hands trembling. The last picture showed the Blood Tide, with Captain Scary and his crew standing at the ship's edge, staring directly at the lens. The next morning, Tom's house was found empty. The door was ajar, and the camera lay on the floor, its screen cracked. Authorities searched the beach, but there was no trace of the other teens, no sign of the ghostly ship. Only the faint echo of a sea shanty, drifting through the fog. And thus, the legend of Captain Scary claimed new victims, adding to the carnage that would continue until the curse was broken. But until then, the blood tide would sail again, and Captain Scary would wait for anyone foolish enough to seek him out. Because those who saw the ship never lived to tell the tale.